Welcome to Whiskey Gaming, and this is my later review of Beyond Hanwell. I played it on the PC. It's also available on the PS5 and Xbox Series X. This is the sequel or a game kind of happening around the same time as Welcome to Hanwell, which no, I have not played yet. But this takes place in an area outside of Hanwell in Westminster. You specifically are ill and you are trying to find basically the former leaders of the group so that you can get into the Ark and cure yourself. There are a few twists and turns along the way, and I gotta say overall the story is fine. It's a cool idea. I don't think it was particularly well delivered. Hanwell's interesting because there's these creatures, they're anomalies, but they're kind of monstrous and there's a wide variety of them. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. Like, the main buildings you need to go to aren't that many and they don't take that long, but there's so many other buildings in the area to explore to see what's going on. And some of it gets really dark and fucked up, and quite frankly, that got more interesting than the main story because of how the main story was delivered, or really not well delivered. I mean, the thing driving you forward the most is the fact that you're playing a video game and therefore trying to progress. I reached a point where the thing driving me forward the most was going to the next area to see what fucked up stuff was going on. But let's get into the audio, and the voiceover work is interesting. I'm not going to call it bad, but it's also not great, and it is definitely cheesy and over the top for a lot of the voiceover work that you do here, which is generally through recordings. As for the sound effects, I think the sound effects, those are good. I think the sound effects were very well done. They help build a very spooky and creepy atmosphere, and that's what you want in a game like this. But to go along with that, I would say the music is very good and helps do that as well. Let's move on to the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and this is a first-person horror game, and this is one where you can actually fight back, and really, the horror elements get kind of nerfed because of that. There's a way of making a horror game where you fight back, and then there's games like this where, while they have built a spooky atmosphere, whenever an enemy pops up, you can generally deal with it very easily. Every now and then they had some great scary bits, but 90% of the time I wasn't worried about enemies because I had enough ammo, I had a great melee weapon, etc. Which you have a melee weapon, a pistol, and a shotgun, and ammo is not super scarce, but there are times where I ran out of, say, pistol, but I never ran out of both pistol and shotgun. Melee weapons do break, which is always annoying, but generally they're plentiful, but there were areas where I could have stood to have a few more. So it's an open area that you go to different locations, and there's a bunch of locations that have nothing to do with the story, as I mentioned previously, but they help build this kind of creepy and weird world. They build some really disturbing and fucked up lore, is the best way I could put it, whether it's a snuff TV channel or Satanist cult. But that being said, I found that interesting, but if you were to just focus purely on the main story, you'd burn through it very quickly. All the other stuff does add more to what's there. There's also a crafting element, whether it's ammo, Molotovs, just all sorts of other stuff. I was kind of disappointed in the fact that they didn't make me need a lot of those things. I stuck to ammo, Molotovs, and the axe that I could build, and that's really all I needed to craft. But again, those resources were not scarce, so there was no like survival element to this. This is straight up a first-person horror game. But again, I felt like the horror was a bit weak. There were some great spooky moments though, I will say that. One thing I will say that's a little confusing is they give you a new game plus, but at the same time, once you complete the main story, you can just continue throughout the world, so I don't know that you necessarily need a new game plus. Now we can get on to the controls, and overall I felt the controls were fine. I did use a controller because it's me, we know this by now. The only problem I had with the controllers was a me thing. I kept pressing left bumper to run when it's right bumper, and I would waste my Molotovs by doing that. It was very frustrating, but that's a me thing. Generally speaking, I found that the controls were responsive. I felt they did exactly what I needed them to do when I needed them to do it. There was a lock-on feature, which was pretty aggressive, but it wasn't a super challenging game, so I don't think it made a huge difference to begin with. Now, as for the graphics and visuals, it's a good-looking game. I was actually impressed. There are some shittier effects throughout. Like, there are some things that just don't look as good as they could, but overall, I think it was a good-looking game. Especially the world. I think the world looks the best. I think the creatures are actually really well designed. There is zero variety within the different types of creatures, and there could be a wider variety of creatures in my opinion, but I do think they looked cool. They looked sufficiently spooky. They each had their own way of moving, their own way of doing things, their own way of attacking, so you knew what they were. And I think making this area as large as they did, and these buildings look the way they did, inside and out, built a very spooky atmosphere. And they did have some good spooky visuals at times, but eventually it kind of wore itself down. There were some great moments within the first hour and a half, 2 hours that I was playing, but as I continued on, it stopped having the ability to scare or even startle me. And unfortunately, visually, there was a lot of screen tearing. Oh man, that was atrocious throughout. But I also had some other glitches occur, like I just randomly fell out of the world at one point, which apparently they were prepared for because I literally got a message when I fell out of the world and restarted in one of the safe houses. So I guess it's good that they were prepared for it, but if you're prepared for it, why haven't you fixed it? And then another glitch, which actually worked in my favor, but nonetheless was a glitch, was during the final boss fight, he just kind of stopped fighting me like a quarter of the way through. So I've still got plenty of boss fight left. He just stopped. And he just let me beat him to death, which, I mean, hooray, that made the game easy to beat. But at the same time, that's not a great glitch to run into, because it kind of strips away from the point of the game being a game. So let's get into the wrap up. I thought it was an interesting world. Poorly delivered. The scares really kind of wore out after a while and stopped being scary, which is unfortunate. I think it was fun to explore, but the story didn't drive me through. Overall, I would say I could recommend this after some patching for sure, but probably not at full price. I think if this was on sale, it's definitely more worth the money. Which is unfortunate because, you know, it was actually an interesting idea and some things were executed well overall, but there's still work to be done. I do hope these guys keep going. I would like to see more from them because they've got a good start. Okay, in the comments down below, since it takes place in England, why don't you tell me, have you ever been to England? And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one. The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you! I wish I could say I didn't say that while I was doing this, but I really did while playing the game. Of Beyond Hanwell. I played it on the... Welcome to Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Beyond Hanwell. I played it on the Xbox. No, I didn't. Welcome to Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Beyond Yeah.